Okay, well, I'm just going to set the stage a bit. We're going to obviously talk about outstanding work environments at UBC. To give you a summary of what we're looking at, UBC is, of course, a large employer, employing about 19,000 people. And UBC has identified a need to sort of attract and retain the new generation of employees. So you have the baby boomers moving out, retiring en masse, and Generation Y and millennials moving in. And Generation Y and millennials, the new generation, has different needs as employers. So very quickly, the key stakeholders we identified are obviously current staff and faculty, as well as students who are affected by the quality of staff, and potential staff and faculty, because of course UBC wants to attract the top talent. And a couple of the current realities we identified at UBC is the fact that UBC is so large, its both geographical spread and just the number of departments tends to create silos. So UBC wants to create a unified vision amongst its employees, but that's not always practical. And also, UBC still has a reputation for being somewhat slow and bureaucratic, which can sometimes conflict with the career goals of this new generation.
Great, so I'm going to talk about the issues that we are facing with this generation mingling. So we've got the old generation and the new generation, and we found that through our brainstorming, the older generation, with our few points here, traditionally value more job stability and security, whereas the new generation has much more romantic ideals about the workplace and really wants things to be fast and up to date with technology, really wants things to be creative, and really, really values and expects a good work environment. And so that ties into continuing education that is expected, and then also the new generation, it's kind of a precedent that they will change jobs many, many times. So it's really important to keep that new generation attracted to their same jobs. Yeah, that's about it.
So then where does that leave us? Identifying issues, we came up with a few modest solutions. The first thing was integration of generations. So one thing that was important was that UBC doesn't sort of turn its back on this loyal group of this loyal generation that is leaving now and say focus all their attention onto the new generation, but they need to be conscious that these two groups are coming together now, and that because they have different priorities, that can be a bit jarring at times. And so having opportunities for cross-generational understanding and learning opportunities for the different groups is something that's still going to be really important. Another thing was just to gain feedback from this younger incoming generation. We kind of brainstormed amongst ourselves a few things about them, and there's lots of research about the new generation, but there's still a need to kind of be surveying those staff and finding out what they like about the workplace, what they want to improve about it, and those things that they like and what they are looking for will change as they start to have families and as they move through their lives. The next thing was promoting the diverse opportunities at UBC. So because it's such a broad institution, because there's so many departments here, one way that we can meet the issue of trying to change jobs many times is changing jobs within UBC. So you can move within departments, and you can start your career in one field, and through the learning experiences that we provide, you can end up somewhere totally different by the end of your career, but still always at UBC. So that kind of ties into the promoting continuing education and the Pro-D as well. Because we're at a learning institution, that's a huge asset of UBC that we can promote to this new generation. Another thing was attracting the recent grads of UBC, because they're already committed to university and there's several thousand graduating per year. There's lots that end up in the workforce here, but continuing to do that. And the last thing was kind of an enhanced orientation program, rather than kind of your individual units having an orientation, one that sort of talks about those broader opportunities on the whole and focuses on the whole, I guess, yeah. So that's it. Just like 30 seconds. Like, oh my God.
Great, thanks so much. So we'll open the floor to feedback. Any questions that you have, anything that you know of that's going on here at UBC to do with creating an outstanding work environment, anything based on what this lovely group has said as well. So we'll open up to a few folks. It could be about presentation style as well, how Daryl held up the sign, yeah. Which I think you did really well.
Could I I just ask a clarifying question? On your first slide, you have a statement that says Gen Y and millennials have different needs as employees. Could you maybe give a few examples of what they might specifically mean?
Well, I think that sort of goes to the
Yeah, that's sort of
second
what I was
slide.
talking about like, having different expectations about speed and technology and kind of thing. Is that true?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, well, what is we talk about?
Would you say that's unique to Gen Y and millennials per se, or would you say that's sort of unique to younger people in general?
What are you differentiating between there? Because
Well,
I think
I'm just trying to
synonymous.
figure out where the split happens between new generation and old generation.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we've got faculty members into their 70s here, and you know, we've got people like me who are in their mid-30s, and you know, reasonably hip, hopefully. And then we've got the new generation, and I'm not sure whether you guys identify yourselves as part of the new generation, or whether we're kind of specifically looking at incoming students as the new generation. So I'm just trying to sort of understand the barometer here.
Yeah, I don't know a ton. I don't know a ton about generations, but I know that there's the baby boomers are the ones that are starting to retire, and there's like that kind of X in the middle, which I think is where you would probably fall, and then there's like Y and millennials coming in now, if I'm correct. And I think we were kind of focusing on, I guess X is kind of lost in the mix there a little bit.
Well, all I'm seeing is, you know, there's you know, romantic and intangible ideals there that they value, you know, speed and creativity and that sort of thing, and that's totally valid. And I'm just wondering whether these are sort of characteristics that you feel are unique to Gen Y and millennials, or you know, are we just sort of talking about, you know, upcoming generations kind of in general would value those things, you know, and might be frustrated working in a large bureaucracy like UBC.
Yeah, I think from what our case study was listing, it was talking about like the now incoming generation, like just entering the workforce,
Right, okay.
and that they have these like specific needs. So I think we're mostly having on those things, and that just because they were a product of the baby boomers and how they were raised, this generation, they have this sort of like unique outlook on the workplace that is like unprecedented as before. So now people that are entering, you know, like I'm 3 years out and I had 3 different jobs and like have moved on like boom, 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 and it's kind of, and like don't have that same sort of almost loyalty or commitment that employers could depend upon before. So employers with this generation, I think, have to work a lot harder with retention, which is one of the things we were talking about, to retain and to keep them. Also, I think because now there's there's this large group leaving the workforce, there's also going to eventually, I think, be more opportunity, and that will lead this new generation to be a little bit more choosier than previous generations being able to be, where it was like, you know, there's a great job, it's stable, I'm going to cling on to that and take that.
Right.
So I think,
not necessarily.
yeah.
Yeah, just one thing, first of all, on your presentation, can I suggest that as students and as young adults, when you're doing presentations, to stay away from words like issues and rather use challenges? Because when you use a word like issues, people's backs tend to get up a little bit. When you use challenges, it's a softer way of doing it. So that's just one thing. As far as, sorry, I'll introduce myself, I'm George. Just started with UBC, and I'm the new integration team lead I'll be working with a lot of the units on their unit plans around outstanding workplace opportunities and things like that. So my job is to actually go around the units and discuss with them what they are doing well within their units and some of the things they may look at, and try and pick up on some best practices that I can share with the units across UBC. I've actually got quite a lot of experience with the generational gaps and bridging, that kind of thing. And what I've seen, I've only been with UBC a couple of weeks, but what I have seen is there are some mentorship programs going on within the organisation, and there's an area of mentorship, it's called reverse mentorship, which is a really good opportunity to pair someone from Gen X and someone with Gen Y together to actually start leveling out some of the differences. Because a typical scenario is, as you said quite correctly, Gen X and baby boomers and Gen X are people who have in the past sort of really liked security and all that kind of stuff, and they're not so familiar with technology as some of the Gen Ys, millennials. And I've got an ex-IT background, so I see an amazing opportunity there with mentorship programs and with job shadowing, opportunities like that of pairing people up of different generations to show people, to do transference of skills. A typical example would be someone who's, say, supervisor or manager, something who's struggling with an Excel spreadsheet. And I'm talking from experience here. So you can actually put someone in there. I mean, I had a 23-year-old employee working for me, and I used to spend like hours trying to get these reports out, and I would call this guy in and say, like, 10 minutes, done. Well, my opinion changed of the generalized, I'll tell you. So, but from what I've seen in my first few weeks here, HR and UBC themselves are committed to actually making UBC an amazing work environment, and there are some really good things happening. And from what I see, when you're talking about attracting recent grads, I'm wondering what you see as, like if you guys are recent grads and you were going to come to UBC, what would actually attract you to come work here? What would you like to see?
We're just not to suspend the conversation, but we do have a couple more to get through.
Okay,
Maybe
sorry.
a quick answer from you folks, then we'll move on to our next presentation.
Okay.
Yeah. So the question was, what would attract you as members of the Millennial and Gen Y generation to come work at UBC?
For me, it's what I said about because it's such a large institution, there's so many different opportunities, and so being able to easily move to the different opportunities and having that facilitated by the people that I work for and stuff, I think is probably the strongest thing for me.
And I would emphasize both lateral opportunities and opportunities for advancement, because it's always great to gain promotions and move up in an organization, but also it's interesting to gain new perspectives to work in different areas, and I think UBC really has the possibility to offer a very strong sort of opportunity.
Thank you.